Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CASAS News and Updates webinar. Today's July 22nd, and we have a lovely agenda prepared for you. Have a seat, get started, and welcome. We're going to allow the participants to join. This is a Zoom webinar, a little bit different from a generic Zoom meeting. So we're going to go through a few of the basics, some of the controls. So everyone have a seat, get situated, grab a water bottle. We will be getting started in just a couple minutes. Welcome, everyone. This is the CASAS National Webinar for July 22nd. We're going to be getting started in a few minutes. This is a Zoom webinar. Can I go through some of the slides first so we can take a look at some of the controls we have? First of all, everyone on this call is automatically muted. It's nothing personal. We just need to keep it quiet because we're expecting probably a couple hundred of attendees. If you have questions of a technical nature, something about using Zoom, please go ahead and type those into the chat box. It's also a good place to say, where's a copy of the presentation today? Now, as you're watching the presentation, if you have questions about the presentation, that's the Q&A box. It's a unique feature of the Zoom webinars, and that's the way that you can post questions. And we have a staff of CASAS people, and our guest speakers today from Novi Adult Education will also be taking questions in that area, in the Q&A box. You can see that little control down at the bottom of your screen. Due to the large attendance, sometimes we get a little bit backed up and we may have to respond to you afterwards. So the best way to post your questions, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the Q&A box. The best way to post your questions is, if you know if it's for someone, you can say for the guest speaker, for Novi, and then be sure to include your name and your email address, so that way we can get back to you. So one of the first questions people ask me is the audio settings. Is it loud enough? If you have problems with that, you can try to self-diagnose it by going into the button in Zoom that says audio settings and changing your volume up or down. If you still have problems, go ahead and put that in the chat box that you're having difficulties on a technical nature with Zoom. Next slide, please. Now the chat box, this is, if you haven't used Zoom a lot before, the two features that are important to remember is the to line. Do you want to communicate to everyone or to all panelists? If you want to talk to everyone, you just, under that to selection where the little arrow is, you can say to everyone and then send your comment out, such as people right now who are saying hello from, goodness, all over the United States. If you have a question you want to send it directly to the panelists about technical nature, you can select all panelists. And that's in the chat box. And here's the Q&A. If you don't have it open already, you might want to go ahead and click on that down in your browser window. It's Q&A. And you can see the questions that are in there as far as the open and then the answered ones. Next slide, please. Be sure to include your name, first name, last name, perhaps your agency name, and your email address if you're posting questions in the Q&A. That way we can get back to you after the presentation if we need to. So welcome today. We're getting started. We're still seeing people joining our Zoom meeting, Zoom webinar. Welcome to the July 2020 CASAS National Webinar. We're going to be getting started in just a moment. We want to say welcome to our guest speakers today from Novi Adult Education. Let's see, 10:59. I'm going to wait one more minute before handing the presentation over to Linda Taylor. So let's get that first slide in case we haven't seen. They're very good. Everyone who joins the meeting, all 546, 47, 48 of you, your phones and computers are automatically muted, and we're going to do that just so it's easier for the presenters to communicate. If you have technical difficulties about using Zoom, go ahead and you can put those in the chat box. If you have questions related to the presentation, put them into the Q&A box. And that way, if you include your name and email address, we can get back to you if there are too many questions to handle in the 1 hour period that we have allocated. Finally, there's a recording of the webinar and the PowerPoint will be posted on casas.org. If anybody hasn't had a chance to download the PowerPoint before we start, this would be a great time to go off and do it. So if you go to www.casas.org, over on the right side, there's a section called What's New. And if you scroll down, I think it's like the third or fourth one, it's called News and Updates Webinars. From there, you can find the July PowerPoint. I think it's saved as a PDF file. You can copy it to your hard disk or open it up and follow along or make notes if you wish. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. I think we're ready to get started. Let's go back to the first slide, the opener, please. Great. So I'd like to welcome everyone today and hand the presentation over to Linda Taylor, Vice President of Assessment Development at CASAS.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're so excited to share a lot of new things with you today. We've been working on a lot of different products and services for you to help you with everything you're doing in these unusual times. I just want to start off by saying that, as you can see, we have a very full agenda. This is not a training. This is an informational webinar, and we do have resources that we're going to show you on our website that are training. One of the things we're very excited to preview for you today, and that's coming soon, is what we're calling a CASAS reading level indicator. And that's a newly available instrument that you're going to be able to use for provisional placement. And very exciting to say that it'll be able to be used on a phone or another device. We're going to do a quick run through of a review of our remote testing offerings and an update. Then we're very excited to have folks from Novi Adult School in Michigan who are going to share their success story with testing in cars. And so that's something where you'll be able to see in great detail how they're doing it, and you can ask them questions. We have some new training modules that have just gone up July 1st that we want to make sure you're aware of and show you a little bit about them. We have now results for GED and HiSET in our reports, so that's something we want to let you know about. And another coming soon is that we have accommodations for test takers with vision impairment and blindness, so we're going to go over that a bit. And then, exciting to us and hopefully exciting to you as well, is field testing opportunities. So this is another thing that we're going to share with you today. So, the reading level indicator. This is, we're calling it the RLI because it's a mouthful, reading level indicator. And you can see it has a name that's different from any of our other assessments. And this is because it is different from our other assessments, but I'm going to tell you about it now. But I'm going to begin with framing it in the context of recent guidance from OCTAE, where if you see the first couple of bullets are hopefully well known to you, that there's flexibility for testing in terms of NRS pre and post testing, and if necessary you can allow that programs are allowed to exempt students if they cannot test them with NRS approved tests. In a recent memo, OCTAE is suggesting that programs use informal assessment to provisionally place students into NRS Table 4. And that is so that you can document that you are serving them, but they are also saying that they would like programs whenever, as soon as possible, to administer an NRS approved test. And when that happens, to replace the provisional NRS level on Table 4 if it's different from what was determined as an estimated level from the provisional test. So if you put a level in there, let's say level 4 from the provisional assessment, but then later you do an NRS approved test, it turns out the student is actually at level 3, then you would have to replace that. So we have responded to this need by we're about to release, it's very soon in mid-August, possibly a little sooner, this reading level indicator. And It is for this purpose. It may be for other purposes as well, but particularly right now, we see the need for it as this provisional placement. You may use whatever you like, but this is an option for you to consider using for this purpose. The target audience is ABE and ASE students, as well as ESL students that are at NRS level 3 and above. The design of this instrument, this reading level indicator, is it's modeled after the CASAS reading appraisal, the 900R, that has 28 items, takes about 30 minutes. So it does contain, you'll recognize them if you're familiar with the goals for ABE reading practice items, because it contains non-secure practice questions and a few additional ones. It has 28 questions, and what's very different about it is that it can be given remotely without a proctor. So this is different from any of our other NRS approved tests. This is a very different situation and would be given under different conditions. I mean, if you want to have a proctor, you're welcome to, but this gives you a lot of leeway to have students take this informal assessment and allow you to determine an estimation of their ability level and put it into the table for provisionally. So this is very exciting, and we're very interested to see. This is a test case for us. We are allowing it to be given on a mobile phone. It's all reading. And we know that some students are good at that. They do amazing things on their mobile phone, enlarging, moving around with ease. Some it may not be appropriate for, and you'll have to decide who you're going to offer this to. So this will be able to be given on a mobile phone or on another device. This we are offering at no cost, but it's only available through eTests and TOPS Pro Enterprise. So if you're in our system and you already have an account in TOPS Pro Enterprise, then you can use that to generate an invitation and be able to offer the test. As I mentioned, it's estimated NRS level for either ABE or ESL, depending on which. You have to decide whether the student is one or the other, and then it can generate, actually it gives both. If you haven't decided beforehand, it'll tell you both. And it does not give a scale score. It gives only the NRS level. So the result will be, you'll know the raw score, and you'll know that it's estimated, let's say, ESL level 5. So it's not an approved NRS test. You may not use it for pre and post testing for MSGs, but it is, we hope, a very useful tool that you can use for this provisional placement. It's called 106R, and as I said, it will be released in early to mid-August. If you want to help us to pilot it, if you want to be an early adopter and try it out and actually use it, you'd be able to use the results too if you pilot in the next few weeks. Please contact Jessie Despain at CASAS.org, and we're going to be starting the piloting next week, so please let us know soon. Here's just a little bit of a preview about how it will work. You would initiate the process by having a student. You can create a student in TE, or you can select an existing student. But again, this is mostly for new students, so you can create a new student and you can send a test invitation to that student with this test invitation button, which is new. And then you can send that. You would need to have either their text number, the phone number for their text for an SMS, or an email within TE would have to be entered if you don't have that already. So that is one of the conditions for using this invitation process. But then that would go out from TE as an invitation to the student. After they take the test, the results will appear in the usual lister. You can see with Rolling Hills Adult School, as an example, there's Form 601R. So this is just preliminary, just to give you an idea. All right, so this is the basics about this new reading level indicator. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and we will be sending out detailed information about it shortly. We're still working out some of the functionality. So We will be sharing with you full details about how it works, how to access it, everything about it. And so as I mentioned, it's for all levels of ABE and for ESL level 3 and higher. And we will, I think we'll try to create a how-to video like we've done for some other things so that we can guide you through this with some, make it easier for you to understand what's going on. All right. Now I'm going to move into an update and a quick review of our remote testing. And if you have attended our previous webinars about remote testing, we've gone into this in great detail. So today we're just going to very briefly run through some of the important points and refer you, I'm going to show you a little bit later on our website where we have archived the previous webinars, recordings of them, where you can get information in much greater detail about what we offer and how to use it. But just quickly to share with you that some of the benefits are that you can pre-test new students, and that's where we are now mostly with new students enrolling to get a baseline score. This is, of course, with an NRS approved test to guide distance learning or determine eligibility for workforce training and many other reasons that you do pre-testing, we know. You can do remote testing as a post-test to achieve MSGs. This remote testing is something that, of course, has come very much into the forefront with the COVID-19 pandemic, but we are hoping that you will make it a regular part of your program because it does offer a lot of flexibility. And now that many of you are increasing your distance learning options, it's a way to test students at a distance who may never perhaps come to your program or who need that flexibility. Many challenges, and one of the things we've just added to this list of many challenges is that there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Will schools open? If they do, how? Will there be space for adult ed programs? If K-12 takes all the space with social distancing? There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and we all have to be poised and ready for whatever is going to come. Some programs have already made their decision about the fall, others are still waiting to hear. So that's a big factor right now, but we encourage you to plan for various eventualities. We know that there are serious equity concerns. They have also very much come to light with this situation where we know that not only proctors, but students, many don't have access to technology, whether it's devices or bandwidth. And this is a serious issue when there may only be online learning as an option. So we hope that those in positions of authority will start to not only care, but also send some money our way and help to address this. The test environment of students is or can be an issue if students are in a one-room place where they don't have privacy, if there's kids or other kinds of distractions of people working from home. So there's a lot of ways that this can be a challenge. And we know that you're used to testing 20 or so students at a time, and when you're limited to 1 to 5, that's a very different situation. So we know that's a challenge, and but it has been necessary given the ability to, the need to maintain test security. So there's some different scenarios that have emerged. One is only to do remote testing if that's your only option, and that could be one-to-one with one proctor, one test taker. It can be with one proctor and multiple test takers. Another option is if some programs are able to go on site with social distancing in one room where it's basically the same as on site, but it's fewer students in the room because of the distance between them. Another one that you're going to hear about today is a version of on-site testing, but in a parking lot with a Wi-Fi hotspot. So that's another variation on the theme. And then there are hybrid models, whether on-site and remote, where the proctor is on-site, but the test takers might be all off-site. Perhaps the bandwidth and the technology hardware is better for the proctor on-site, so they may go but have their test takers off-site. Or Another model is where you have the proctor on site, and some of the test takers are in that room, others are in other rooms. So essentially they're remote from the proctor. They're not in the same room, but they're in the same building. But so that's a combination of really of same room and other rooms. Another thing we like to suggest there is that you perhaps can try to set up some cameras in the rooms that are not with the proctor, or even in the one with the proctor, and then you can get a better view of what's happening with the students. These are the tests that you can use, these multiple choice for remote testing. And we have 4 different approaches. They're all possible with one-on-one, and 2 of them are also possible with multiple test takers. I'm not going to go into the details. This is all on the website, but we do have detailed step-by-step and scripted directions for all of these with a guidelines document, and we have a quick reference guide for each one, and we have other supports as well. So in these documents, we use Zoom as an example, and but you may use other web conferencing platforms if that's what your district prefers. So this is a chart that you may have seen before that puts it all together in terms of for each of these approaches, which how many test takers, which devices, for the proctor, the test takers, which platforms, and other aspects. So I'll let you look at that in more detail from previous webinars. In terms of multiple test takers, just a quick understanding just to get a sense that the way it works in Zoom that we recommend is that you put test takers in what they call breakout rooms or private rooms, and the proctor can't see all of them at once. That's one of the downsides, but the proctor circulates between these rooms where they can support test takers and check on them. You can have more than one proctor involved and more than 5 students if you have more than one proctor. So there's different ways that you can organize this. And you can, as you do on site, you can have test takers taking more than one test form at a time. There are a couple of requirements. One of them is that if you're planning to begin remote testing, we need you to submit the agency remote testing agreement, which is on the CASAS website. That's one per agency, and I will show you a little bit later where that is. Then all your proctors, we have something called the Proctor Remote Testing Agreement. And this is for you to manage and ensure that your proctors read the guidelines and sign this document, and for you to keep on file in your program to make sure that they're following the procedures. We have a set of 10 going remote checklist items that you can follow if you're planning to implement. So you, one of the requirements is that you have already implemented CASAS e-tests, and if you haven't already, our Go Live team is ready to support you if you're ready to make that decision to start using CASAS e-tests and leave the paper behind, partly or completely. It's up to you. If you want to do remote testing, that's required. And read the guidelines, sign the agreement, have the proctor sign the agreement, make sure you've got equipment for the approach you're going to use and the technology, registering test stations, and that's something we have some a video for, a how-to video. And then as always, you're going to select your test sessions. You're going to try it out first, it's so important, and then you're going to go remote. This, as I said, we have a new how-to video on how to register a station with a code. That's a new, very quick way that we've implemented for you to get, if the students are going to be giving the test on their PC or Chromebook or iPad, then there's a way to register their station with a code. Or you can register the station with credentials. That's how it's normally done. Or if it's already registered, you can just use that device. So we have these new videos. One is for remote, for the codes, another one that we showed in our last webinar, but you can see it, it's prominently placed on our home pages, a video that is a simulation of the one-on-one approach with the remote control using Zoom. So if you haven't seen it, it's about 7 minutes. I highly recommend it. It gives you a good idea, even if you don't use that approach, a good idea of what it looks like. And here are all the things. I'm going to go onto the website a little later and show you the page, this remote testing page where you find all these resources. But now I'm going to turn it over to Linda Chanfera from Novi Adult School in Michigan and ask their team to please present to you how they are doing testing in cars.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Pat. Everybody, welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. We're very happy to share with you what we did in Novi. A little bit of background about our program. Michigan is divided up into 10 regions. Novi, Michigan resides in the 10th region, which houses 51% of the population. So we are the largest region in the state. And Novi Adult Education is part of Novi Community School District. We are a program that is about medium size. We have about 400 English as a second language students that we service. I think that one of the things that's important to know, at least about our program and our district, and I know about me, is that we have a mindset, or my mindset is where there's a will, there's a way. And so when we were faced with the dilemma of how we post-test our students in adult education, there had to be a way to do it. And the idea came to, as I was standing out, quite frankly, looking at our school, the parking lot, which was a tremendous amount of space, and the idea came, why can't we test here? And so I should say that that was really the birth of the idea. And then the idea itself was then pitched to my assistant superintendent, Dr. RJ Weber, and to our IT manager, which is Anthony Lacricchio. And we took the idea and we took off from there in terms of how can we make this happen. And I'm very fortunate to share that we have a very supportive school district. Our administration supports not just K-12, but they support alternative and adult learning as well. So we are very fortunate in that respect. So with that, I would like to hand this over to my ESL teacher, Tom Razor, who has the PowerPoint presentation. Tom?
All right, thanks, Linda. Let's see if this works. Okay. All right. So first off, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the project that we ran in late May. I was on site for the 3 days that we did this, along with 2 other teachers. And I just want to talk briefly about what we did, what we learned, and what we want to adjust for the next time we did this. And this PowerPoint will just kind of go through those things. So I'll start off with some images. You guys can see where we were working. We have these very large bus lanes drawn out. So when we put cars in these, they're like 8 feet apart. We just don't have trouble with social distancing in that way. And we're also really lucky to have this big overhang. So it did rain one of the days, but we're not going to get rained on. And so it worked out really well for us physically. We offered this as an alternative for our students. So we offered remote testing in the purely, set up their laptops fashion. And then we also offered this alternative, coming to our lot, using our Windows 10 laptops for students who are comfortable with it, for students who didn't have a good home environment, whatever. And we had a lot of really good uptake for it. So I'm gonna go through just like a basic structure of what we did. And then I can sit in the Q&A and answer any questions for me as well. But the basic structure of what we did was 4 parts. We signed students up on web service need to meet about 2 weeks ahead of time. We invited all of our students who needed a post test. So we cover ESL and ABE students. We only ever give electronic tests, so all these posts would be electronic. We had a great response. I think we had a couple students sign up and then not arrive. I'll go through results at the end, but it was about 50 people in total. So it was quite a few people. And we started the sign up about 2 weeks out to do this in late May. So we started this in the middle of May when things for COVID were still pretty uncertain. Once we had our signups, we built an appointment list, which we'll show off. And then that was kind of our pre-setup. We arrived that morning, we did some physical setup, and we'll go through our physical setup, packed it up each day. And that was kind of the loop we went on to do these 3 days of testing. So our digital setup was done through Need to Meet. Need to Meet is a web service. You email people a link. This turns out to be a huge benefit for us because we can put whatever we want in that email. So we put in there lots of information, no bathrooms because students cannot enter our building at that time. We didn't want anyone else in the cars because they cannot be in there while the students test. So like they have to go somewhere, they can't go in the building. It's a good idea to have people bring photo ID so you can confirm who these students are, because not every teacher knows every student. And so these are the things that we sent them to set up. Once that was done, this is the Need to Meet interface here. Once that was done, we were able to go onto our sheet. Need to Meet is a good software for this. It's easy, it's free. The problem that we had is that it is designed for large groups or for like tutoring one-to-one. So neither design is really perfect for us. And also, as you can see on the interface here, there are so many slots. It's really hard for students to figure out like, when is my time and where am I signing up? But we did do this and it led to our testing design of 1 slot every 15 minutes. So a new student arrives every 4 times an hour. That was designed at the time in May to ensure that we would stay under the gathering limit that had been imposed on us. It was possible for us to do it, but it would be easier with a higher gathering limit as things relax a tiny bit in the Northeast. It led to a lot of downtime, and we are thinking next time we might be interested in doing them in slightly larger flights and maybe with a different scheduling software. This was our appointment list that we kept. You can see it's got the 15-minute arrivals. We have on here student CASAS IDs so that we can, quickly get them into the system. This is a living document that we used that all of our teachers had access to. If somebody arrived, we blocked them out green. If someone missed, we blocked them out orange. We put emails in there, phones, to just try and get everybody into the lot at their specific time so that we could give them a test. That's everything that we did ahead of time. So once we had this all set up, we kept doing this, kept offering this until those days in May. And on those days in May, we went ahead and we started physically setting up. So we arrived in the morning, about an hour before the first appointment. We pulled out everything we needed. The physical equipment that's the most important is this Wi-Fi hotspot. And so here I'm actually gonna toss this over to Anthony Lucrecio in our tech department, and they're gonna talk about like what that is. But we're really grateful that we had access to that because without that, this is just totally impossible.
Hey, Tom, thanks for that intro. It's Anthony Lucrecio and
Grayson Thomas.
appreciate you guys inviting us here. And basically what we did is a lot of, I was trying to figure out how other places were going to be handling testing in a crazy environment like this. And a lot of people were contemplating, oh, do you increase your signal from inside your access points or your Wi-Fi points, cause bleed out into the parking lot. And that just, we didn't want to even try to even test that. So what we ended up doing was purchasing an external Wi-Fi access point or an external AP that was specifically built to withstand obviously different weather conditions and ultimately to spread a rather large signal. And so what we did is for this to be a temporary item, we went out and we first looked at our security cameras, looked through all of the different views, and we noticed we had 2 cameras in front of our building where we could temporarily pull that down, use that port, just think of you're plugging in your internet cord, right, to get access. And in place, we installed this external AP unit. So this is by Meraki. There's actually a pretty large sale on them. So I don't know if any of your IT people can still look or not if they're interested. And so for under $1,000, we were actually able to have it installed. And that unit put out an extremely large signal. And Grayson can touch on that real quick.
It was an immensely large signal, to the extent that I, from the access point, walked over a football field's distance away in both directions from the unit. I walked so far that I eventually reached the parking lot of a different school and still received full signal from this unit.
Yeah, I believe he was able to stream a video. And, you know, so granted, we did our homework, just double check the amount of people that could be on it. It was, you know, over 60. Actually, I think it was more into 70, 80. So that's kind of the outlook on that, the makeup. And we actually moved forward, and for an extra under $400, had a contractor come out and put a new actual drop, so where you would plug the device into. So now that's a permanent staple on our building, because I think we all know this we're going to be going remote to traditional, remote, traditional. So we want to have this basically at our fingertips and whenever we need to.
All right. Thanks a bunch, guys. Yeah. So with that in place, it was possible for us to start doing our testing because we do depend on that consistent connection. Other than that, the core of our setup was similar to what we would use for an on-site test: 15 laptops, big basket of headphones. We're really fortunate in that we have headphones sufficient to test like 100 some people at once, and that means that we can recycle them. So we set up with 2 tables, a clean and a dirty. The dirty table is not really dirty. It's just a place to put stuff that needs to be sanitized. We set up with disinfectants, gloves and masks for staff, hand sanitizer for those who could not tolerate the gloves or who weren't going to be directly working on the computers. We also set up with half sheets with the students' test logins and which tests were needed. So because there are different students coming in, we want to make sure everyone gets the right test. We set everything up with the clean and dirty table separated. We had the idea that the staff work surface should be the dirty, so that what we're doing is we're just sanitizing everything there regularly. And the clean table is going to be reserved for computers that have been sanitized, been cleaned, been given a new clean set of headphones, and are now ready to be taken out to a student without having any contamination concerns. So we prepped for the first arrivals, and then we just kind of waited for our appointments to come up. Once they came in, we moved people to spaces. We just kind of flagged them down, brought them to the space we'd like. We checked that ID, and then we just had a little kind of script ready to go. And that script included stuff like, we will be circulating in the lot, looking in your windows. We're not spying, we're just watching. Please put your phone away. Just like live, they all have phones, and we do want them away. So almost everybody used their glove compartment, which, because we are looking in the cars, that's very secure. It's going to be okay. So they put their phone away. They would use our headphones. We would bring out the computer, the headphones, and that paper with their ID, set them up. We would monitor that setup process where they plug in their ID, make sure that it's the right student, look at their tests, help them pick a test. And then finally, we would let them start. We would respond to any questions, hands that went up. We would make sure there's no phone usage, no external conversation. When a student is done, they just flag us down. At that point, we check to make sure that we have got 2 scores from the student, or however many we need. But you don't want them to drive away if you don't have what you need. So we make sure we have what we need, and then we thank them, send them on their way, take our machine back, drop that on the dirty table. And whenever we have a moment, we sanitize those as quickly as we can, return them to the clean table because they are now ready for use, cycle out the headphones for new headphones, and it's ready to go again. And in this way, we were able to get through 4 people an hour, 8 hours a day. So, 30 some people a day, very efficient, and could be even more efficient if people can queue up at the same time, 3 arrivals instead of 1. Some considerations that we had, there is an admin station. That's where the person who's watching the results roll in, intervening if something needs intervened with for some reason. We found that was really helpful to put 1 person on that station and no one else, to prevent cross-contamination. So multiple people aren't touching it and you don't have to wash it 1,000 times. And that really helped us be more efficient. another thing that we thought about is just that in the future, it is less than ideal to have people sitting in these polluting cars, breathing, whatever, and that it might be ideal to do something very like this, but in a tented or outdoor setting. Though obviously the cars do have the benefit of climate control because it does get pretty hot. The other things that we had some trouble with, we did have trouble with some outdoor distractions. I had a young man try to take a test during a parade that was for graduating seniors that we didn't know about. I kept offering him to do it a different time and he kept doing it and did pretty well. So he's a trooper, but really coordinating these things, no mowing while you're doing it, really will benefit the students. And then other than that, just that it is working outside and it is pretty difficult. Our results were quite good. We were able to test 55 additional students this way. About half them made gains. And keep in mind that that is just 2 months after the school shut down completely, the earliest 2 months of remote instruction. So we're pretty happy with that. The students seem really effectively very happy to be back on the property doing stuff. And just from my personal, it was a delight to see people again. It felt really good. So we were glad to be able to offer this to people who wanted that option, who preferred that option. Those are kind of the things that I have to talk about from our experience, but I will go into the Q&A and answer any questions that anyone has got.
This is Janice. There were a couple of questions, Thomas, that came up over and over again. One was if you could describe the name of the external AP that you used, please. And if you know the AP Wi-Fi unit.
And I think Anthony Lucrecio was going to send that link.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'll let Anthony and them take care of that because I do not know the name of the.
Yeah, I'll add it. And also it's a Meraki MR74. And so for everything installed with the unit, with the licensing, it was $978, so under $1,000. And Cisco bought Meraki, so if anyone's familiar, it's a solid unit.
And if I could, someone asked, I saw in the chat box, what about winter? To be honest with you, ideally we would not want to test in winter, but if it came down to it, I would still do the same. I would try it out in the winter with the cars running. Not ideal, but if it's a way to get that post test, I'm going to try it.
Janice, were there any other questions that you'd like? We can have time at the end as well.
Also, people were asking for a copy of your PowerPoint. That would be very helpful. If it's already posted somewhere and I can share that link, or if you'll send it to them afterwards. If you're interested, please put your name with your email address in the Q&A box and say, for Novi, request copy of PowerPoint.
We'll email it to them. If they send us our link, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, or actually we're happy to put it on the CASAS website if you're okay with that as well. And it's going to be in the recording here anyway. So
I was going to say, I don't have a problem with it being on the website, and
okay,
you
great.
guys need us to make it available. We can.
Sure. All right, terrific. All right, well, let's carry on then. Let's see if I can, I need to share my screen. All right. So can you see that? Someone can tell me?
Yes.
Great. All right. So we're just going to talk a little bit more about these options for testing, a few additional points. You may ask, or we would like to sort of mention, what is social distancing and what do we mean by it when it comes to testing on site? Because that is a solution that many programs are looking at and hoping for. 6 feet apart, I mean, I think that's pretty much the accepted norm, but it is in all directions. So that's really a fair amount of space in a room that's normally devoted to testing. It's going to really limit how many students you can test at a time. But some innovative ideas that have come in from around the country are, and maybe some of them are obvious, but if not, that hopefully helpful to you, use a larger room. So don't do it, use laptops, don't do it in the computer lab, but go into a larger room instead of that lab, or a very large room and multiple proctors if you want to have a bigger event and if you think you can manage it. Another tip or pointer about this is, if you can, use a room or perhaps it's a classroom that has an outdoor entrance, because that way you can, just like we see with restaurants and out in our communities, that people are waiting outside for services, and so the same thing, weather permitting, is something that could happen for testing, and people feel more comfortable with that than being inside for a long time. We have collected some quotes from local agency staff that we wanted to share with you, and some of them are actually rather surprising. One agency reported that their students felt more relaxed taking the test at home. So that's an interesting perspective, we thought. We are hearing from a number of agencies that students, including Novi, that students do seem to be performing well, in fact, as well as on site. And we do have some preliminary results from the data that we've looked at. Just, it's not as, we're going to keep looking, but we have done a quick preliminary review of data. As I think you know, we are now able to track whether tests are given remotely. That's something you do, and we really ask you to please adhere to that. There's a button you need to push and make sure that if you are giving a test remotely, that you're indicating that as that is in TE. So please be faithful to that, so that we will be able to tell and do that analysis as to whether students are doing as well or perhaps better with remote testing. Then also, there's of course been a concern about the time that it takes. Of course, there is the time to engage with the student, invite them, make sure they're set up with the technology. But then once they start the test, what we're hearing is that it does not seem to be taking more time when they're doing it remotely. This we can't repeat enough, is that it's very important to practice before you launch into this. Get your act together, make sure the engine is running smoothly, and then pull the trigger. Linda herself said it, and this is, I guess, something that she's famous for, but when I spoke to her about a month ago, this is something she told me about their approach to all this. And so where there's a will, there's a way is such a great way to get through this whole pandemic. And so I wanted to share that with you and have it in writing. So we are seeing a lot of innovative ways that programs are implementing remote testing. But we do want to remind you of some do's and don'ts. First of all, that it's only permitted using e-tests. And we're talking about the NRS approved tests now for pre and post testing, only e-tests. No, and that e-test must be live, proctored, and online. So just, we are finding some interesting creative solutions that we're having to say no to. And so maybe if you could please be aware that it's not permitted in any way, shape, or form to copy, scan, or reproduce a paper test in a way that a student could take it remotely. No. If they're going to be remote, they need to be on e-test. That's the only way that we allow that to happen. So you may not also not send NRS approved tests to students to take it home, because there's no one controlling that paper test. It's just out there and not secure at all. So that's under the not. I wrote it down, and I just hope you understand that these two bullets here are not allowed to do. So I don't want to overly emphasize the negative, but I felt it was necessary to remind people that not to be too creative in because and of course I know you're looking for ways to do this, and perhaps sometimes a little desperate to find ways to do it, but please if you could adhere to these guidelines, not to use the paper tests in any way except on-site. Also, just a few other things that you, as you work through how you're going to do this in your programs, is start small and scale up. As you saw, Novi, with all of their great planning, they were only testing 4 students an hour, 30 a day, but maybe they can scale up now that they're good at it. And so that's, I think, a good model. If you are using more than one of our approaches, that's possible. That may work. It may work for some of your students, like the lower level students. You feel a need to be one-on-one. Your higher level students, you might feel that they're capable of being in a group of test takers with one proctor and can follow instructions better. So you can use your discretion and use more than one approach if you'd like. You might add staff to make it run more smoothly. But the basic e-test monitoring rules still apply, that the cell phones have to be turned off, away, under the seats, on the floor if you're face down, in the glove compartment, as you heard, or you should be circulating. And you are, as with on-site testing, you can use native language for lower level learners just before the test begins to help with getting them sorted out and ready to test. All right, so now I'm going to ask Dawn Montgomery to share the next few slides.
Thank you, Linda. Hi, folks. We are pleased to share some training updates with you today. If you have any questions about CASAS training, please contact training@casas.org. Next slide, please. I'll share some information about the new training modules and address recertification in the current program year. Afterwards, I'll take you to the training website to show you how our new training is organized and how to enroll in training. Next slide, please. CASAS implementation is now offered in 4 new online self-paced training modules. These modules are organized by implementation type and list the modules required for that type of implementation, such as if you administer e-tests or paper tests. You will notice that Module 1 is listed in each type of implementation. This is because CASAS implementation basics is universal and applies to each of these 4 types of implementation. So if you use CASAS e-tests and paper tests, you only need to complete Module 1 once, because Module 1 is the same for each type of implementation. And Module 4 is highly recommended with all types of implementation to get the most benefit from interpreting test results and reports to improve instruction and program outcomes. Please note that completion of online training certifies individuals to use CASAS materials and does not certify the individual to train others at the agency. Instead, everyone should individually complete the online modules that apply to the CASAS implementation at their agency. Next slide, please. Some of you may not be aware that registration is no longer required to access modules on the training website. So you can access the new training modules from the online training button on the CASAS website homepage itself, or go directly to training.casas.org. A tip you will want to remember is wait to log in until you are prompted to do so from the training site. Next slide, please. This year, you will use the new implementation training modules if your state or local agency requires you to recertify in the current program year for CASAS implementation. And even if you are not required, we highly recommend taking a CASAS implementation refresher at least every 2 years. Next year, we will have recertification modules available. Previous slide, please. Yes, thank you. Next year, we will have recertification modules available based on special topics or features of the CASAS system. We're not quite sure what that will look like just yet, and welcome your suggestions and requests. Just send them to training@casas.org. So depending on staff roles and responsibilities, you will want to direct them to completing modules in the category matching your agency's implementation of CASAS, if you are administering, for example, e-tests or paper tests, and for any staff member involved with using CASAS results to inform instruction. With the release of the new implementation modules, we officially retired the long-standing former implementation basics and beyond implementation basics training. Next slide, please. The training site has been reorganized into categories containing the modules that relate to that implementation. Here are a couple of examples of these categories. Since registration is no longer necessary, simply click the Enter Here button to self-enroll in training. Next slide. The latest addition to the training site is a remote testing user group. If you have any questions about remote testing, please contact remote testing@casas.org. Next slide, please. The purpose of the remote testing user group is to provide a forum for users to engage in discussion about remote testing. So we are looking for interested users willing to share their experiences and exchange ideas about remote testing. Next slide. If you are interested, please email remotetesting@casas.org. In the email, include, if you wouldn't mind, your name and contact information, the name of your agency and state, the remote testing approach you are currently using. So now let's take a quick tour of our training site. Can I share my screen, please? Whoop, let me make this larger here. When you reach the online destination to CASAS training at training.casas.org, you will see the new categories for e-tests and paper test implementation, test results and instructional resources, remote testing, SIT, and WSCS, a technology category, which is in development and when finished will offer videos with documentation using CASAS eTest and TOPS Pro Enterprise, and an in-person training completion portal, or several of them, for states conducting face-to-face training. To enroll in training, simply click on the module title, enter your login credentials, and click Enter here to enroll in this module. And that concludes the live tour of our new training website. Linda?
Thank you, Don. So now we have a few other newly available reports and products to share with you. Some of you may already be familiar with this, but wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that we now have the ability to tell you the likelihood of passing, that is for an adult secondary ed student, either the GED or the high set. We completed our studies with both HSE exams, and we had enough data to be able to share with you as it appears in this chart. And this is on the TOPS report I'm going to show you in a second, but here you can see it large enough that in the GED, in the reasoning through language arts, this student, So Min Lee, her likelihood of passing is that she's ready to pass the reading, and the mathematical reasoning has a medium chance of passing and may pass, but more study may be needed. And for the high set, if you want, you can have both HSC results showing, or you can just decide in TE which one you want to show. And this comes in the individual skills profile at the very bottom. This will appear for on ABE students' reports. So this is just wanted to make you aware that we've had the high set there for quite a long time, but now we also have GED, and that's there for you to now use with your students. Another new innovation that we have, and we're very excited. It's been a long time coming. It took a lot of work to get this up and running, and that is that we have in CASAS eTests, it is now compatible with screen reader software. This will be rolling out on August 1st. And this allows test takers with visual impairment or blindness to use CASAS eTests with a screen reader. They can hear the test directions, they get a description of the prompts and the test questions and the answer options. A reader or scribe is still needed for test administration support throughout the sessions. We have this now available for, August 1st, reading goals, math goals, and the most often used levels B and C, these particular forms of life and work reading. So in addition to being in eTests, there are also materials that we're calling accommodation materials for test takers with visual impairment or blindness. These are supplements to the regular TAMs and test booklets. And these supplements, there's one for visual impairment blindness for each of these series. And there's also, for some of them, what's called a tactile graphics or braille supplement for math and life and work reading, which is used by test takers for some of the items that are particularly difficult to convey with the screen reader. So for that, there is a tactile graphic version. So information about these is on the website at this link. You can order them now, even in the CASAS catalog. Here's a bit of a graphic to give you a clearer sense that for reading goals, we have the manual, this supplementary manual for this, just for reading. Just this manual, the supplement rather. For math goals, we have the supplement as well as the tactile graphics booklet because that was necessary for some of the items. For life and work reading, we again have both the supplement as well as the tactile graphics piece. So these are the materials. And if you'd like to help us pilot this, please let us know. We have been working it through and we'd like additional people to try it out. We're getting all the bells and whistles worked through and we'll be making it available August 1st. Just to remind you, hopefully you already are aware, but just like to always reiterate which are the NRS approved tests and for which population. So for ABE, it's reading goals for ABE, ASE, approved through 2025. Math goals for ABE, ASE, approved through 2022. For ESL, we have Life and Work Reading, 80 series, Beginning Literacy 2728. If you're permitted, some states don't allow this, but if you're permitted, the Reading for Language Arts test forms are also approved and can be used. They're a little more academic and high school focused, that kind of content, academic content. Life and Work Listening 980. All of the NRS approved ESL tests from all of the test publishers are approved through February 2021. And we are expecting Octave to release some information shortly about this. So please stay tuned for that. The status of the series, of course, for ABE and ASE were those are approved and fine. For ESL, these are pending and they will be strongly aligned with both the CCR and the ELP standards. So these are new test series that we are planning to submit next year for ESL. Field testing, I'm going to hand it over, I'm going to ask Karen to talk now. Karen?
Thanks, Linda. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. Field testing is another area in which we've had to switch gears a little as well. I'll be sharing a brief overview of CASAS field testing and providing an update. So here are the topics we will cover. Some of you are likely very familiar with field testing. In fact, before I go any further, I'd like to give a shout out and a big thank you to all of you who have so generously contributed to field testing over the years. We are most appreciative of your support. Some of you may not be familiar with field testing, so I'll talk a little bit about what it is and how you can benefit from participating. I'll give an update on the status of CASAS new assessments in development and give you some details about what our current field testing opportunities look like. Next slide, please. Field testing requires collaboration. It is a vital part of developing new tests. Simply stated, field testing is having your learners take our not yet approved assessments. We use the information we collect from the test results to develop assessments that are valid and reliable for all adult learners. Field testing is a critical part of test development. The reason we field test is to develop new assessments that meet the needs of today's adult learners. In order to do that, we need thousands of students from a broad demographic so that all adult learners are represented in the research and ultimately in the tests that are submitted for approval. Field testing is an opportunity for learners and agencies to be part of the bigger picture, and the students love the gift cards. Next slide, please. Here I want to give you a quick visual of the test development process. As you can see, this involves many stages, and don't be afraid, there will not be a quiz on this later. So the process is ongoing and often requires several years of work. Field testing plays an integral role in this process. Next slide, please. The last round of field testing in the test development process involves final forms studies. We began these studies for our new series in February of this year. And as you know, many initiatives have been in a holding pattern since mid to late March. Field testing is no exception. We are excited to be resuming these studies and hope you'll consider participating. When approved, the new series will replace the current Life and Work series with 5 skill levels in both listening and reading for ESL. Next slide, please. We are conducting these studies now through December 2020. ESL students and ABE students whose first language is not English may participate. Field tests can be administered with e-tests either on-site or through remote testing. Paper and pencil field testing materials will be made available once CASAS staff is able to return to the office. There is no cost for field testing materials, and the field tests do not consume web test units. Field testing will not affect your regular program testing. In appreciation of their time and effort, your learners will earn a $5 gift card for each field test they complete, and participating agencies will also receive complimentary web test units for each modality. Next slide, please. We need thousands of students to participate so we can thoroughly conduct our research and submit the assessments for NRS approval. Even if you are unable to participate at the moment, we hope you'll consider it in the upcoming months. If you're interested, please contact me for more information, and you can just email fieldtesting@casas.org as well. So back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Karen. That was great. Just very quickly, we're at the top of the hour, but I want to just summarize what's coming very soon is this reading level indicator for provisional placement, the e-test compatibility with screen reader, the accommodations materials, the remote testing user group. Actually, you could sign up right now. And coming soon, very exciting, is listening tests on smartphones. And we have a pilot going for that. We're looking into more remote testing options with multiple test takers, more video demos you'll be seeing, and more promising practices presentations. I certainly hope you enjoyed the presentation today from Novi, which I think was very, very relevant and hopefully just what you all needed to hear. If you're going to start e-tests now and you're inspired by remote testing, now is a great time to do it, and we've got staff ready to help you. So thank you so much for attending today. We had nearly 1,000 people on the call, which is very exciting in July. And here are contact emails if you would like to follow up. If we didn't get to answer your question, we are going to stay on the line now for a while and answer a few more questions, but I just wanted to bring the session to a close officially. But as I said, if you want us to hang on, we are here for a little while and we'll keep answering questions. So thanks for attending, everyone. So Janice, are there particular questions that you'd like to raise for live responses?
There were 2 questions about how do you enroll in field testing and is that done remotely?
Karen, do you want to answer that? Do you want me to show a certain slide for that?
Oh, well, just in order to enroll in field testing, you contact, and we will set you up with a testing session. Yeah, that's my contact information. So if you express interest, then we'll arrange to connect and I can give you more information and get you started.
Great, thank you. Also, there were
Thank
questions.
you.
There were questions also about remote testing in parking lots and if using paper and pencil and the possibility of laminating the actual papers, the test booklets, please.
That's not something we've heard before, but I think as long as your monitoring is sufficient, it should be possible. You would have to use answer sheets just as if they were, you know, in a on-site. you're not going to have them mark in the test booklets, preferably. So I would say that you might have to give them something to write, use for the answer sheet, and then they can have the test booklet in the car as long as you're monitoring carefully.
And as far as laminating the test booklets, please, so you could wipe them off in between.
Well, that's not something we recommend, though we know programs do it, but yeah.
Please, are the people that, is the Novi team still on? There may be some additional questions if people
yes,
want to type those in
we are.
the chat box. We can do that.
Yes, we are.
Great. So Eva Cantwell, you had a question for the Michigan group, please. Do you want to add that to the Q&A or the chat, whichever is quicker for you?
Hold on.
Maybe in the meantime, I know there was a question from someone in corrections, or it was kind of a comment actually, that what they've been doing for their provisional or informal placement is they've been using the practice items from the CASAS website, the goals reading questions and the goals math. And that is okay. Those, you are welcome to use those questions in whatever way you like, however they're useful to you, as long as you don't use them as a formal pretest, because they're not that, of course. They are not NRS approved in any way. And in fact, we did take, as I mentioned, we drew from those practice items for this reading level indicator. I would recommend, if you can, then use, once the reading level indicator is released, I would recommend that you might prefer to use that because it is modeled after the goals appraisal. So you would, I believe, get more precise results. You still get an estimated NRS level, but it would probably work better in terms of getting good information. And we haven't quite figured it out yet, but we are looking at making a way for programs that are using TOPS Pro Enterprise. In other words, you may be using paper, but you are scanning your answer sheets and then using TOPS Pro Enterprise to generate reports, for example. If you are using TOPS Pro Enterprise, then we're looking to find a way that you may be able to generate a version that you could give on paper and then do the same with an answer sheet to see the results. So stay tuned for that.
I'm looking through the Q&A, see if there's any other broad sort of questions.
There was the question for Novi. Did that happen?
I didn't, there was a question in the Q&A, but not verbal. I didn't hear anything. We answered.
There's lots of requests for that PowerPoint.
Yep.
We'll follow up on all those afterwards. Thank you.
I see there's a question about how soon we'll have listening tests on smartphones. We are piloting that now, so that could be coming in the next few weeks. Odette, if you would like to pilot, please let us know.
Specific question from Florida is, Linda, are you able to answer that one?
Let me see if,
do I need to obtain permission to do remote testing for the Florida Department of Education?
Well, actually, as of yesterday, I heard that the Florida Department of Education has approved remote testing for adult education, ABE and ESL. So you can, I would suggest contacting Phil Anderson at the Florida Department of Education to get the details. And I believe they're going to be publishing their TA paper on that shortly.
Washington Corrections site, which is using eTest, they asked, would there be the offline version of the RLI as well? And I think you mentioned that. The paper version of the RLI, offline version.
We'll look into that. Please follow up, send an email to Jesse Despain, and we'll we'll see what we can do about that.
Oh, this is Richard, and I would just think you
There you go.
wouldn't need it because you can use e-tests. So the Washington Corrections are able to give e-tests within their correction facilities. So I wouldn't think you would need RLI. But if there is a need, let us know so we understand the need better.
If they want to do it without proctoring, maybe.
Right, but I would assume they have proctoring because they're inmates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, so we'd have to find out what their exact need is.
Okay, Jody's answered. Any other questions emerging?
In California, there's one question about the testing agreements, the agency remote testing agreements, which were completed in June. I think I'll answer that one. If you're in California and there's an agency remote test agreement, which you filled out prior to the end of June, the answer is yes. In California, you'll need to complete a fresh one for the 2021 program year. It's in the same location. I believe one or two questions might have changed slightly. So please do that. And then you can use the print button to save as a PDF to your hard disk, and be sure in California to send a copy to your program specialist as well as your CDE consultant.
Someone asked about the which level tests are used for HSE students, and those are in the goals series, the level C and D.
Someone asked about the pilot period for the RLI. We're going to push that out as quickly as we can. So we think we have plenty of volunteers already, so we're not lacking in that. And depending on how well things go, that could be fully in production in early August.
This webinar will be posted on the CASAS website. And actually what I can do, because I didn't get to go to the website before, is go there now and show you where. Here is the CASAS homepage. And if you see on the right, under What's New, there is News and Updates Webinars. If you click on that, you will see the PowerPoint for today's presentation already is there as a PDF. And as soon as we get it from Zoom and can process it, we will put the recording of the webinar right here. And also when we will post the Novi PowerPoint as a PDF as well right here. And this is where you'll see notices for upcoming webinars. We'll plan to do one in August. Then I want to show you also back to the home page. Here's this one of the videos that I mentioned on giving a demo of remote testing. And then on the right, under What's New in very big letters, we have the remote testing page. And this goes here where you'll see some of the latest things. And whenever we're making updates, we're going to be posting what's the latest in this document. We've put right here this new remote testing user group that if you'd like to get involved there, you can click that link. And then some of the newer things are also noted here. Down below, we have all the documentation and supports that you need for each, in general that is, and for each of the different approaches to doing remote testing. And at the bottom, you can see the agency remote testing agreement for all states except California, where they have their own, and the Proctor remote testing agreement for anyone. Well, actually, sorry, California has their own as well, I believe. So, Janice, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. This page is key, and please refer there often and make sure to see what's new. Any other questions that have emerged while I was doing that?
There's a lot of interest in the listening test being available on smartphone. This would be for NRS pre and post testing. It's in pilot already, so we expect it to be available to everyone by mid-August.
Any other questions that,
Linda, there's questions about the RLI being on paper and pencil.
yeah, we have to work that through. We haven't figured out how to do that, right?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Looks like the questions and comments are winding down. Anybody else have any from on the staff side? Anything else to mention?
This is Janice. No, I think good. We do have a number of things to follow up on in the answers column. Something we'll be working on.
Yes, for sure. We'll go through the all the questions in the chat box and the Q&A, and if there were any questions that we need to either research or weren't able to answer during the webinar, we'll definitely get back to you. If you are still on, and if you asked a question that didn't get answered, if you could please make sure to include your email, because otherwise we don't know who to send the answer to. So if that's the case, please, we'll stay open for another couple minutes maybe. And if you asked a question and didn't get an answer, please re-ask the question and include your email.